How's it going? And welcome to a video about debugging within the Chrome web browser for JavaScript. My name is Arroyo Morgan, and you can find more information and videos in the description, as well as a website to my page with more documentation on how to web development. With no further ado, let's get into debugging in the browser. So basically, when you have Chrome, you'd open up Chrome. I'm using an example page that you can find on javascript.info. That's javascript.info. More information in the description below. When you open up Chrome, you have a few ways of getting to the debugger. You can either go with these three dots here, click More Tools, and open Developer Tools right here. Or you can say, as it sees, Control-Shift-I on your keyboard, and it'll open up the Developer tab. Now you have these different tabs right here, or panels as you'll call them. We're going to start out with the Sources panel. The Sources panel's got three sections to it. If you open it up and you only see one of the sections, or perhaps see just this, learn more about workspaces, you can open up the navigator here, and it'll show you the outline of your app with the window top, DOM, your server, and the files within your application. Now this will be all your files and images that you have within your app, and it may vary depending on what your app is. That's the navigation panel. This is the code editor panel. And this is where you do JavaScript debugging. It's called the JavaScript debugging panel. So now that we know where the navigator, the editor, and the debugger is. All right, so now that we know about the three panels that you see under sources, let's move on to the console. The console is a tab of its own right here that you can click on to get to the console panel. Another way to get to the console panel, if you're on any other tab, just hit the escape button and it'll pop up the console panel on the bottom over the tab that you're currently on. When you run the console, you can run commands such as any JavaScript command that is valid in JavaScript. In cases for us, you can run functions. We have different functions that will show up as you type, just like in your code editor. Some of them will run, some of them will tell you undefined, some of them will give you unexpected results. That's for you to play with and figure out. If we wanted to run a script that's in our code, we have this function right here, hello name. It takes in a string of name, so we'll say like hello, and then I'll say debugger. Execute that, and I'll get this pop-up. And of course, that's because our script runs that, and it runs this second script of say alert, which has an alert pop-up and runs. More on that later on in a different video. So back to the console. So that's basically how you can run the console. It has a return type of undefined. That's what it's showing you here. Anything you run will have this return type results on the second line after the command. All right, so let's examine what's going on within the code of this example page that we have on hello.js. We're going to go over to hello.js, and it's going to show us the scripts. If you ever are navigating through your files, you can also see the file names attached above that you previously clicked on, just like in your code editor, especially your code editor, more specifically VS Code. Within the sources, we can do debugging, and you can set breakpoints within your file. So to do a breakpoint, you click on one of these numbered lines within your script. So we got a breakpoint here on line 4, and I'll set another one here on line 8. When you set breakpoints, you can go and see where your breakpoints are within the debugger. Under the breakpoints, under the file name, you'll see where we set our breakpoints. So a breakpoint is basically a point of code where the debugger will automatically stop during JavaScript execution. When it is paused, you can check out various variables, execute commands in the console as we showed before. So I can hit console and run commands. And you can also do anything regarding debugging. Okay, so anytime you set any breakpoints here, you will find them within the breakpoint section, even if for some reason I set a breakpoint here. And you can also remove them by right clicking and saying remove breakpoint. Or you can uncheck them. And if we go back to the file here, it shows this one unchecked. Or in this case, I'll uncheck this one and I'll remove this one as well. You can also set what is known as a conditional breakpoint. So you can say edit condition, and I'll tell you to write an expression that gives a truthy value for this breakpoint to execute. So basically, an overview with this, we can quickly jump to the breakpoints in the code, temporarily disable the breakpoint by unchecking it, and we can also remove the breakpoint by right-clicking and clicking remove breakpoint. All right, another way you can set a debugger on inline is to write debugger, set it on the line that you want the debugger to be paused. And this will only work if you are within your developer tools and have the developer tools open. We're not going to do that for this example. All right, so an example here with the hello function. We're going to call this when the page is loaded. So the easiest way to get the debugger to pause like this is to do a page refresh. You can do this with Control R. You can do this with Control F5. Both of them will refresh the page. F5 does a hard reset, as they call it, that will reset the cache of that page. All right. So now we are looking at a pause section of the debugger. It's currently paused at the breakpoint that is set as line 4. We click on the Watch tab. We can watch expressions. Sign and input an expression. The debugger will show its value automatically, recalculated in the process of the execution. So we can try to say phrase. And right now, phrase is hello, John. Second thing we can look at is the call stack. Call stack. At the current moment, the debugger is inside of the hello function, and it's called by in the script index.js. All right, excuse me, index.html. We are not going to set a debugging point there. Scope. This is where you see the current available methods and values. Global variables, these are all within the global JavaScript ecosystem. All right, so now we're going to get back into tracing the execution when we run breakpoints. So if I set a breakpoint at line 4 and 8, I can execute by simply restarting the browser with Control R or Control F5. Control F5 is a hard refresh, which clears the cache in that browser page. Okay, so what you're seeing right now is the paused in debugger. You can resume script execution with F8, which is also down here. Continue the execution, resuming the execution. If there's no additional breakpoints, then the execution just continues and the debugger loses control. But if we click on it, here's what we see. We get stopped at our next breakpoint. Okay, so the execution is resumed. It reached their other breakpoint. It's inside the function say, and it's paused there. So we can look at our call stack here. If we close breakpoint, you get a call stack right here. We see that we are in the say function. It increased the stack by 1 since we left hello, and we went to a new called function in the call stack. All right, so the next button we're going to talk about is the stat button, or F9 key. If you click it, it should run the now alert function that we're on, which it does. Clicking it again, it's going to run through and step through all of the script values. All right, next is step over. You run the next command, but you don't go into the function. And this refers to functions that are created by us as the developer, in other words, custom functions and not built-in functions like alert, which is a built-in function right here. Comes with JavaScript. So once you hit that, it'll basically go from not running this line. Like if I was going through step, it would step through and stop at this first line of the code like it did with alert where we already have a breakpoint. If we do step over, it's gonna run this, but we're not gonna see any execution of it, and then it'll stop here. Once it stops, you'll be able to see any variables that are being watched, as well as the call stack changes if necessary, and the scope of which locally we have this window and it has a phrase hello John, and then we got the global stack stuff. Moving forward would be the step into, and the high key for that would be F11. This is similar to step, but it behaves differently in the case of asynchronous function calls. If you're only starting to learn JavaScript, then you can ignore the differences between function calls, asynchronous function calls, and regular function calls. It's not something that I talked about in this video, and we'll go over that later. Just note that this step command ignores the the step command, excuse me. Basic step ignores asynchronous calls, while this step into function will execute and await asynchronous calls. Step out, it continues the execution to the end of the current function, and then get out. And that is shift F11. And it's right here. So you'll continue the execution and stop it at the very last line of the current function. And this is handy when you accidentally go into a function and you don't really care what's going on in that function. You can use this step out to get out of it without having to continuously step through each step as you would with step. This right here is just basically deactivates and activates the breakpoints. Another thing with the debugger is that it will automatically enable and disable in the case of an error. When you enable the developer tools, an error during the script execution, it automatically pauses it, and then you can analyze the variables within the debugger to see what's going on. If the script dies from that error, we can also open the debugger and enable this option to reload the page to see where it died at and what context it was at when it died. If you right click on the line of code, that opens the context menu. So right here, and you can do things like continue here to run the scripts at that position where you want to continue the debugging at that location. All right, so one last thing we'll talk about is logging. To output something to the console, and that's within this page right here that I created earlier. We can go to the console here. Here I have a console log statement. It says log things with this to see in the console. When you run the page, it says log things with this to see in the console. I spelled console wrong. Oh well, but execute it again. So basically, once the page loads, the script gets executed from top to bottom. We can also do the same thing with the for loop here. We're going to console log the value going from 0 to 5, increasing by 1 each number, and it's going to say this is what I'm doing. Or we could say here is the current value. Here's the current value 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Console log it to Control Shift I, or more tools and developer tools. All right, so just a summary, we're going to show you with Firefox. If I hit Control Shift I can open up my developer tools. I got the same thing. I got the inspector here, which they call that an inspector, but this is where the elements page was on Chrome. You can see all the sections of the HTML. You got your console where you can do the console. This is the script that I showed you just a minute ago running in the background. And you have your debugger here. Same thing with the watch points, the breakpoints, the etc. Breakpoints, we didn't get into that. Event listeners and such, that's all there on Chrome too. You can get different things with the networking, performance, memory. Basically, the point is everything here is similar, if not the same, to Chrome. You even have your files, your file windows. If I clicked on a file, I'll get the code editor here. It could perform anything. I can set my breakpoints. And that is a quick rundown of how to debug within Chrome with JavaScript. Just a side note, if you were to do the same thing, try to get to the developer console, I'm not on a Mac, but I can tell you that for the Safari Mac browser, is a little bit of a special thing that you need to set up, which is called enabling the developer menu first. If you open preferences and then go to the advanced page, there's a checkbox at the bottom that says show develop menu in the menu bar. This is the Safari settings. And once you do that, you should be able to open your developer tools with Command Option C and toggle the console. If you have any more questions, please ask them in the comments. Check the details for everything regarding the links and sources here. And please make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for further tutorials. Thank you.